all the rainfall that we get, a monsoon-driven country, we only harvest 8% of the rainfall that this country gets. When the Ganga is polluted, 400 million people really rely on that water source. And yet we are not foregrounding this conversation. We think of it as something that activists are bothered about, and we don't see it as a central economic conversation. All our conversations about GDP, auto slums, FMCG slums, exports, all of that very quickly will seem irrelevant if we don't engage with this. So there's been one man who's been engaging with this issue for 30 years when none of us were looking at it. And right now, he's coming from the field, having done a nationwide survey to really bring home to us the extent of this crisis, how it is not really a nature-made crisis as much as a man-made crisis, with an absence of management, an absence of good policies, as well as a kind of intrinsic distributive justice that is not taking place. The sheer share of what we in urban India consume as opposed to what rural India consumes, all of that is part of the water crisis that we are facing. And as I said, this is not going to be a conversation. P. Sainath is going to be telling us about this. And just one little anecdote brings home to us how this impacts people's lives. Last month, a family in Punjab lost its last living male. The great-grandfather in the family had committed suicide, the grandfather committed suicide, the father committed suicide, the brother committed suicide, and then the last living male member, a young man of 27, committed suicide because they could not repay a loan of 7 lakh rupees. The farm crisis, the water crisis, and very quickly the urban crisis of India are all going to converge. And there's one man talking to us about it. The least we can do is to listen with complete attention. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite P. Sainath onto stage.
Thanks very much. You'll forgive me if I race a bit. I'm acutely aware that I'm one of those standing between the audience and lunch, and that's dangerous territory to occupy. So I will race a bit. The politics of water, which I'll be talking about, and the thirst economy, the politics of water are quite different from politicians on water. And also the way the media covers the issue doesn't help the kind of water crisis we're facing. In fact, if you look at the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks of headlines and front page news on the rains, essentially they're telling you the deficit has been made up. So much excess water is there. This is a pretty dumb and silly way of looking at the water problem. Torrential rain doesn't recharge the water sources. In fact, it leads to soil erosion. The way water is spread and distributed by the rainfall has everything to do with success and failure in your agriculture. Okay. Now take the district of Anantapur in Andhra Pradesh. 20 years, it's had the average amount of rainfall is normal. 16 of those 20 years, it has had to declare drought. Because you have 300 of its 545 millimeters coming in 24 or 48 hours, and then a 60 to 75 day dry spell. Farmer sows twice, loses twice, because the water doesn't come when you need it. And we are not placing the discourse on water in the larger framework of what is happening with climate change and climate crisis, and that is going to get more and more and more acute. So the idea that the normal is so much, and if we get that much in the year, the problem is solved is pretty dumb. In fact, the meteorological department last year came up with a new category, new to me anyway, and I followed their data, and I appreciate the IMD the India Meteorological Department as an institution. We tend to reassure ourselves. So in 2018, they spoke of a near normal monsoon. To the best of my knowledge, there is no such category in the last 100 years of the IMD. No more than a guy in the ICU is near alive. Okay? There is a deficit, there is normal, and there is excess. The near normal was a phrase termed because you were 9% below the aggregate that you should have got in that year, in the monsoon. 9% is a national figure. It's a national figure averaging all the regions. Okay? But if you broke it up, it was Marathwada 25%, Vidarbha 27%, Northern Karnataka 27%. And then what happens with the PMR, the post-monsoon rainfall, the deficits, according to the same IMD data, were 80 to 88% in 7 regions. That's a hell of a big deficit. That includes the usual suspects, Marathwada, Northern Karnataka, etc. Now, if we choose to look at water as a matter of efficiencies, something that can be fixed with technology, we're doomed. Simple. It's an explosive political, social, and cultural issue. And there isn't enough water to go around fulfilling the illusion created that we will somehow irrigate every acre of land in this country. That water doesn't exist in the world to irrigate every acre of land that we cultivate. We should be thinking about dryland farming, planning more for dryland farming and lower water use farming. Anyway, you look at every single major intra-regional, intra-state dispute in this country, the ones that stick out enormously are water. What's the biggest political problem in the south of India for 100 years or more? Sharing the Kaveri dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Between Tamil Nadu and Kerala, it is Mullaperiyar. Between Kerala and Karnataka, it is the Kabini River's water. Between Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, the Almaty Dam water. Okay? Everywhere. You know, some of us, I think, are old enough to remember that what happened during the Khalistani agitation in Punjab in the 80s, a lot of people don't remember that it was very closely linked to the water, the distribution of the Ravi Bias waters between Punjab, Haryana, and Rajasthan. The 28 rounds of talks of Rajiv Gandhi with Sant Longowal invariably broke down on the issue of water, not on the issue of Gurbani on Doordarshan or anything like that. It broke down on the sharing of waters. You know, those who write about the coming water crisis or that the next war will be fought over water, I mean, I don't know where they've been living. Wars have been fought over water for 2,000 years in recorded history. They've been fought over water for 2,000 years. Second, every day there are huge issues of transfers of water and conflicts over water that are not just at the intra-state or the intra-regional level or the intra-district level, say within the old unified Andhra Pradesh, Telangana versus AP, or even Kurnool versus Mehboob Nagar. It boils down to individual families. In Kurnool a few years ago, a farmer died, leaving 20 acres of land to his 5 sons. Right? Simple. 5 sons, 4 acres each, problem solved. Instead, the younger brother killed the oldest brother. The younger brother killed his oldest brother. What were they fighting about when the land delineation was so easy, when the land division was so easy? They were fighting about which 4 acres had the borewells on it. Which of the sons would get that patch, because the borewells tended to be concentrated within a few acres. So a brother killed a brother, right from states fighting, or look at India's problems with Pakistan, whether you're talking about Baglihar, that side, or the Teesta and the Faraka barrage on the other side with Bangladesh, or the Kosi barrage with Nepal, or your Brahmaputra problems with China. There is no gigantic problem you are involved in which does not in some way reach into water. So we need an entirely different way of thinking about this. Also, for instance, in trying to think of how water can be efficiently allocated, etc., etc., don't forget the social and caste dimensions. This country, for 1,000 years and more, irrigation in this country has a distinct caste geography. Going back to the old times when the most dominant or the forward caste tilled at the headwaters, the intermediate castes at the middle waters, the Shudras at the tail waters, and the Dalits excluded entirely from water, entirely on the southern outskirts of the village, because most streams run north to south in the country. And to this day, you read about a Dalit woman being stripped and thrashed for trying to take water from the well of the main communities, the main well of the village from which they are excluded. So if you don't figure in these social and political factors into your water crisis, you're not going to go very far. Now, what is this thirst economy that I speak of? I'm going to take two elements in the time we have. In the state where you are today, which is Maharashtra, between November and June, the two fastest growing industries, in my take, are unregistered industries. The fastest growing are the borewell industry and the tanker industry. These are the two fastest growing industries in this country, in Maharashtra, between November and June. Now, in Marathwada, for instance, you will find in Osmanabad, Beed, that side, in the peak period from March to June, you will find in every village there are at least 3 attempts at sinking a borewell per village. Now, 80 to 90% of these are failures, and borewell bankruptcies are very clearly linked to some of the farmer suicides we see. Now, in Beed, which I think your chief minister was talking to you about earlier, there's a gentleman named Vishwambar Jagtap, who on his 18 acres has sunk 48 borewells. Now, he's the reigning Limca Books champ, but there are many others who have put 12, 15, 20. The cost of this is not simple, okay? And let's say you're doing this borewell in a state like Maharashtra. How many of us even realize that the borewell in Maharashtra, either you strike water in the first 60 to 100 feet, or you want for the next 600, because your soil composition is 93% hard rock. You're on the Deccan rock. If you don't hit water in the first 100 feet, then the next 600 feet you're not going to get it. So borewells have necessarily to go way beyond 600 feet now. And each foot for drilling is in hard rock, 75 rupees a foot. I'm giving you an outdated figure, it must be about 90 now. And in soft soil, soft loose formation soil, about 20 rupees less than that. The minimum a borewell driller will do, he needs for his optimal success or profit, is he has got to do at least 1,000 feet in a day. Now, please understand this. Do you know how much your aquifer is being drilled into every year? In the south of India, in Tamil Nadu, there is a little town called Tiruchangod, near Erode, 20 minutes drive from Erode. How many of us know that this little town is the borewell capital of the world, the borewell rig capital of the world, with anywhere between 10 and 20,000 borewell rigs registered in that town. 10,000 are registered, the rest are registered naam ke vaste, they're registered in Karnataka and Kerala and Andhra to avoid taxes and other things. But there are at least 10,000 functioning borewell rigs there. Just to show you what a borewell rig looks like, may I ask my colleagues there to open the folder? Yeah, now that's what a borewell rig looks like. This one cost 1.5 crores. It's owned by a gentleman called Mr. Shelke, who bought it, of course, from Tiruchangod. He recovered his 1.5 crores in 4.5 months. He recovered his full investment on this in 4.5 months. Okay? Now, if you ask, if you visit Tiruchengood, as I did, and you will find that they claim to work all but 2 months during the monsoon, and they are working in 16 African countries, every Indian state and union territory, including they have sunk a couple of wells not all that far from Cherrapunji. Okay? So if you sit there during the monsoon period, you'll see all of them coming back for servicing from Mizoram, from Rajasthan, from wherever else. Now, even if we discount their claim that they are working 300 days a year and say, okay, only 200 days a year they are working, and because say 100 days goes in movement of these gigantic things, you move with a crew of up to 20. This rig is accompanied by another van which has the labor, the cook, the driller, the engineers, and 4 or 5 people will be on the rig itself. The minimum, the Tiruchengood people will tell you honestly and openly, the minimum we have to do in a day for it to work for us is 1,000 feet in hard rock and 1,400 feet in loose formation soil. That is their classification. Okay? Loose formation soil and hard rock. Because in loose formation soil, you'll reach 1,400 feet in the same time it takes you to reach 1,000 feet in hard rock. What do they tell you about this? They tell you that they have to do a minimum of 1,000. Now just consider that it is not 20,000 rigs, but just 10,000 rigs. 10,000 rigs, 1,000 feet minimum, 200 days a year. It means the borewell rigs from this one little town of 60,000 people are striking annually 2 billion feet into your aquifer. 2 billion feet. Just try accommodating that idea in your head. You know, are we thinking about this? Are we thinking about, you think that's going to be recharged? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The idea that there is an infinite supply of water down there is pretty dumb, as we all know, when you're using 60% of your water in agriculture from groundwater. Yeah. So this is another of the problems that you have. I repeat that figure for you to absorb. The borewell rigs from one town, and there are other big borewell rig towns coming up in Gujarat and Punjab and elsewhere, but from one town, they account for a minimum of 2 billion feet of drilling into the aquifer each year. Just think of what the implications of that are, and it will intensify as the search for water grows greater. The fact of borewell failure doesn't stop people from drilling. The same guy puts 48 wells, out of which 5 or 6, he says, yield him some water. Okay, so that's a second issue. That is one element of the thirst economy. The second fastest growing industry is the tanker economy in Maharashtra. Yeah, can we move to the tanker slide, please? Let me just explain that, you know, the tanker is not some highly sophisticated technology. It's a 3 mm sheet of mild steel rolled in. It can be done by hand also, hand rolling as well. That is the hand roller, that's the lathe or whatever on which they roll the steel. So 3 mm sheet of steel, and you can see that up there, and that's what a tanker is. Now these range from 500 liters, which can be carried on a bullock cart, to 25,000 liters, 25,000 liters that go mounted on huge trucks and, you know, vans and lorries. So that's the thing. This is from a place just a little outside Ahmednagar town called Rauri. It is the tanker capital of Maharashtra. Most of the tankers, and we don't know how many there are, government requisitions, it doesn't own them. It requisitions them, pays private owners for up to 7,000, 10,000 each season. Yeah, almost all those tankers are owned by members of the Legislative Assembly, by ministers, ex-ministers, corporators, these are the people who own the tankers. Yeah? And you can go and check it out. You can go to Rauri and see who owns those units which I'm talking about. The tanker industry in Aurangabad, in the single town of Aurangabad, way back in 2016 when we did the calculation, was making 10 lakhs a day in the peak drought scarcity season in one town of Aurangabad. And the water they're getting you is public water, but it's sold. Okay, nationally, I'm sure you're all familiar with the figures, but I better throw it to you. India's per capita availability of water in 1951 in cubic meters was 5,177 cubic meters. By 2001, 5,177 cubic meters had fallen to 1,816 cubic meters. By 2011 census, it fell to something like 1,514 cubic meters, a 300 cubic meter fall in 10 years. When the 21 census comes, I don't want to speculate on what that figure will be, but you better worry about it. You need to worry about it. Now, the crisis, as I see it, I mean, you know, occurs in 5 daily transfers of water. It's all very cool to blame nature and the invariably cliched headlines, nature's fury or cruel nature. A hell of a lot of this is about what we have done to the water and how we use the water and how we prioritize our use of water. Right? There are essentially 5 transfers which I'm speaking about. None of these is, I mean, I'm not giving them in any particular order of priority, and they're all interlinked and overlap. But these are the transfers which are so commonplace that we don't factor them into our thinking. They're so commonplace, they're so everyday. It's like going home in the night and stepping over someone sleeping on your street who's a drought refugee from Osmanabad or Bid. You don't think about it. The 5 transfers in no particular order of priority are: 1, agriculture to industry. In this state, in Andhra Pradesh, in Karnataka, there are hundreds and hundreds of legal and illegal bottled water units taking God knows how many millions of liters. There are no serious data available in many of these sectors like tankers, bore wells, bottled water. How many liters of water go into these in the transfer from agriculture to industry? In Andhra and in Telangana, it has led to a bit of a few wars, if you like, between local communities and these units. You'll also remember Plachimada, Varanasi, the battles of local farmers against Pepsi and Coke about withdrawals of water on a large scale. That's one transfer. The second and very critical transfer in India is food crop to cash crop. You're sitting today in a state with 93% hard rock and major drought prone areas, and yet the state of Maharashtra grows 2/3 of her sugarcane, 2/3 of its sugarcane in traditionally drought prone areas. Now, according to the figures Professor Nilakanta Rath worked out from the Maharashtra government's agriculture website, an acre of sugarcane in this state takes at least 18 million liters of water. 18 million. Would you show us the other tanker picture? There's one more in that. Those are what the tankers look like in Rauri. People come and pick up the size they want, the private operators, but they give you public water. So in the transfer from food crop to cash crop, what is 18 million liters of water? By the way, many independent experts disagree that it is 18 million liters. They say it's closer to 20 million. But if you go by the website of the government and the figures that Professor Rath calculated some years ago, it's 18 million. What is 18 million liters of water? 18 million liters of water is 7.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools, or the volume equivalent of 9 Boeing Dreamliners. Okay? That's how it is. That's how much water that is. In that same water, you could cultivate 6 to 10, depending on the system used, acres of jowari. Okay? You could cultivate a lot more acres of other crops than in food crop than you can in this cash crop. But this is the most protected crop in the state. Right? I'm not demonizing sugarcane. I'm not asking you not to grow sugarcane. I'm saying you don't try growing coffee and pepper in Antarctica. It's no less intelligent or unintelligent to try growing sugarcane in deeply drought-prone areas, in perpetually drought-prone areas. So that's the second transfer, food crop to cash crop, and food crop is going to be the sufferer, especially as another angle altogether of climate change sets in. And the things that we have done to the soil also means it's very difficult to go back to rain-fed agriculture from borewell-driven irrigation. The third of those transfers is from rural to urban. Again, I'm giving you the state in which you are sitting. In 2016, the Times of India reporters, Priyanka Kakudkar, did an RTI which showed us that in the state of Maharashtra, towns and cities in Maharashtra get 400% more drinking water than the villages of Maharashtra. That's a government of Maharashtra figure. 400. Now, are somehow people in the cities thirstier than those in the villages? Is their fluid replacement level demand greater than those who do physical labor in their lives? Obviously not. But they get 400% more water than the villages do. Yeah? Now, I live not very far from here in an area called Bandra Reclamation. I've lived there since 1989. I have never had a day without water. I have never had an hour without water in my flat. Yeah, but all our water comes from 5 lakes in Thane, from the Vaitarna, Tulsi, the 5 lakes of Thane, which are deeply embedded in Adivasi territory. Their water comes to us, but try going and looking for a piped connection in an Adivasi household in Thane. There are deep issues of justice involved in our water crisis. Try going and looking in Thane for how many households have piped water. I get their water. So I'm cool. I don't have any water crisis. The idea that, 21 cities are going to be in trouble. Man, 2 lakh villages are already facing that situation, which we are worrying about the cities facing some time from now. It doesn't stop us from breaking down agriculture in the countryside and sending more refugees to those very cities which are going to be unable to cope. They cannot cope with 5% of their infrastructure, cannot cope with 25% of their existing population, which is why we have decided to build little Xanadu enclaves and call them smart cities, which I think are a very dumb idea. Okay? Your Bhopal smart city, your Indore smart city, by its plan, is going to work for 2.8% of the existing population of Indore. Now, on the one hand, you're opening the floodgates of migration to the cities. On the other hand, you're saying, I cannot cope with the city, I cannot cope with its water distribution, with its health, with its education, with its transportation needs. So I'm going to build a little privileged enclave called a smart city. There are serious issues of conflict, social conflict, tension, and caste conflict and class conflict that are going to arise from those directions that we have chosen. The fourth transfer is from poor to rich. Now, all 5 transfers are from the less privileged to the more privileged. But let me give you one example, which India today covers every year. Every year in summer, you have those photographs, don't you, of poor women in Marathwada standing in kilometer-long queues near the tanker. Who hasn't seen that photograph every single year in summer in one newspaper, magazine, or the other? Has anyone considered how much that woman pays for a liter of water? Yeah. At the beginning of the season in Marathwada, she will be paying 45 paisa per liter. And actually the cost is higher because she has spent 3-4 hours standing in the queue. She has spent hours standing in the queue plus the 45 paisa per liter, opportunity cost, whatever you want to call it. By the peak of the scarcity season, and that's what the thirst economy is about. Let me say this, the two greatest crops in the world are not rice and wheat. The two greatest crops in the world are hunger and thirst. And it's the exploitation of that, of the scarcity of those, that yields more revenue historically than all the other industries put together. Okay? So she is paying 45 paisa at the beginning of the scarcity season, up to a rupee per liter by the end of the season. In the same Marathwada are 24 beer and alcohol units, which get 5 million liters of water daily at 4 paisa per liter. So that woman at the peak scarcity is paying 25 times what industry does. Okay? 25 times, or at least 10 times. Because 45 paisa at the best. Right? Now, just consider how fair that is. Are there issues of fairness and justice involved or not? Is this just a technological problem, an efficiency problem? I say it is not. It's far deeper. It's a politically explosive problem. It's a class, caste, and social issue. The fifth transfer, and then I'm going to show you about what political decisions do. The fifth transfer is from livelihoods to lifestyle, and I'm going to show you something from Amchi, Mumbai. The buildings that are planned, which are, mercifully, I take some credit for it. It did not come through, but they got clearance for it. Okay, and many such buildings exist on a smaller scale. Maybe kindly move to the thing on water main, the folder in water main, the photos there. Buildings are planned, some exist at about 12 floors, where there is a balcony pool on every single flat, on every single floor. Okay? This is called balcony swimming pools. As I said, I'm proud to say that this didn't finally happen. That building exists today, but there was a lot of protest and they couldn't go through with building those things. But they had got clearance for it. They will get clearance for it. I'm very sure one day they will put it there. Now if you're the kind of reporter that I am, you go and speak to the construction laborers who are working there. Who are you guys? Where are you from? Sahab, hum shetkari sahib, we are farmers. Okay. Hum shet mazdoor, we are agricultural laborers. Then what the heck, I ask, are you guys doing here building swimming pools? Okay. In one of these structures near Pune. They say what to do, there's no water in the village. There's no water for agriculture. They have left their villages because agriculture has no water and come to the cities to build your swimming pool and mine. Just consider that. Is there an issue of fairness and justice or not? You're going to have to prioritize what you will use your water on because you are running out of it exceedingly fast. Can we move to the next picture, please? This is how it is to look when completed, okay? One of the projects. The bottom 10 floors, by the way, are entirely for parking so that we can create our own private climate crisis. Yeah? The bottom 10 floors are just for parking, and each floor you can see this, and this is one side. I don't know whether they were supposed to come up on the other side. I did not take sneak pictures or anything. This is from the advertising of the builder. Okay? And the 75th floor is a modest penthouse linking the two towers with a bigger swimming pool because the builder is a big guy. So can we move to the next one? This is the artist's vision or nightmare, as you will, when it's completed, how it will look at night and the amount of energy it will consume. Now, I'm being a bit mean about Mumbai, which has been my home for 36, 37 years. I am from Chennai, and we like to think of ourselves as a more refined and elegant culture. So we don't do obscene things like a pool on every floor. One on every third floor will do. Can you move to that picture, please? This is in the Keelpog Gardens coming up. Yeah. So my favorite though is if you drive down, and tomorrow if any of you do this, drive down from Mumbai to Pune. What are the hoardings you see en route? What are the maximum number of hoardings? Luxury villas with exclusive swimming pool. That is a very, very important part of it. They're a bit unsporting. Whenever I write about it, they remove those things immediately. Can you show me the next one? This is my favorite. Luxury homes with an attached forest reserve. It's a real marvel. I think the builder is appropriately named. Yeah. In this state, the damn tiger can't find a protected forest reserve where it isn't shot dead. Yeah. Remember Avni, the tigress, how she was shot dead. But the builder gets the protected forest reserve. If it wasn't, it would be funny if it weren't real. And it's actually happening. Just motor down from Mumbai to Pune and see the number of boards. All of them will emphasize the pool. This is your livelihood to lifestyle. Guys, when this city, Maharashtra, had four of 5 golf courses in 1991. Today, we don't know how many, but it's well over 20. The average golf course takes 1.8 million liters of water a day in season for 19 holes. And they use no other sport uses so much pesticide, because you've got to have the grass just so. It's got to be perfect, right? The pesticides from these flow into the neighboring farms and contaminate the water and soil of farmers around the world, particularly in the Philippines. There have been shooting wars between farmers and owners of private golf clubs. Philippines has had 4 or 5 major outbreaks in the decade 91 to 2001 of that kind of warfare between them, right? Then there are the political decisions. And so I'm saying these are your 5 transfers, right? Agriculture to industry, food crop to cash crop, urban to rural, poor to rich, and livelihoods to lifestyle. The livelihoods to lifestyle, we could go on all night showing you what kind of things happen to water in this country. And we are worrying about the cities. We're not really worrying about the cities, because the cities are not one compact class group. They're not one homogeneous group. How much water per capita does Ghatkopar get as against, say, Kaf Parade or Malabar? What is its consumption? The difference is in hundreds of liters per capita each day. Okay, so you're looking at a serious class issue as well in that. And then there's the political stuff. In 2016, major rivers in the state of Maharashtra, originating in the state of Maharashtra, ran dry. The Godavari, a sacred river to the people of the state, which it emanates from a place in a mountain called Brahmagiri, comes down to a Ganga Sagar, and from there goes subterranean wise into the Ramakunda, which is the sacred bathing ghat. Mentioned in literature for at least 1100 years. That's where people dispose of their dead. Like your Varanasi Ghat, it's the equivalent, but you also have your Shani Snan there, like you do in the Varanasi Ghat. 2016, my colleague Jaideep Hardikar and I, both of us for the People's Archive of Rural India, decided we would visit the source of 7 rivers and figure out why they went dry. It was entirely a man-made disaster. In the name of promoting religious tourism, we have cemented, concreted, and marbled every one of those source towns of the rivers. The water can't breathe. The earth can't breathe. The same phenomenon creates drought in summer and floods in monsoon, because the water comes from tiny streams down Brahmagiri to form the Godavari. From there it goes in a subterranean way. It meets concrete barriers, it diffuses in summer, it dries out. In monsoon it comes and meets the concrete barrier and breaches the barrier and floods. The town which is the source town of the Godavari, the Trimbakeshwar town, Trimbak town, in summer gets water once in 3 days it gets tanker water once in 3 days. Now the other wonderful thing that happened with Godavari going dry was beautification. The government, the Nashik Municipal Corporation, in its wisdom, decided that the billions-year-old rock looked ugly. We should do it up with Italian marble. So they dynamited the rock. They blew out the old Shamshan Ghat, blew it out, and then marbled and concreted the rock area, whereupon the Ramakunda, the sacred Ghat, went dry, leaving exposed millions of kilograms of human remains deposited there over centuries. So then you had the absurd phenomenon of trucks removing 20 tons of human remains each day. Then the Ramakunda was dry because you have marbled it. Nature finds its way through rock. But we stopped that water. Then the government of Maharashtra, in its wisdom, ordered, what did it order? The Ramakunda shall never be dry. Fill it up with water. For the next 100 days, 90 days, 100 tankers poured water into a river, making you the first society in the world to pour tanker water into a river. For God's sake, do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. Then, okay, so then when we got there, we went to the great marbled Ghat, and it's all concrete anyway. And the Shani Snan was taking place, and I was looking at this individual with that very devout look that you do wear in such situations, praying and bathing from the holy and sacred waters of a tanker. Can you show the slides, please? Okay, now you can see it. Next one, please. You can see the pipe going all the way down from the tanker, filling the Ramakunda. Next one. And there he is, bathing in the sacred waters of a tanker. This was how the Shani Snan took place for months and months and months. So the things we do, the planning we do, the deforestation around these areas, the concretizing of these towns, Nashik, Trimbakeshwar, Mahabaleshwar, destroyed the natural flow of rivers. When they have plenty of water, it doesn't matter. They come. When they are on a low ebb and when there's a serious drought, they go dry at the source. That's what we did. And that's what caused Maharashtra to... What else did it do? By doing this, we destroyed the grape crop of Nashik in 2016. Many farmers went bankrupt. Nashik, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is one of the greatest horticultural districts of our country. If you go by weight, every fourth tomato in India comes from Nashik. Yeah? And grapes, you all know about Nashik grapes. These grapes produce 3 to 4 million man days of labor for agricultural laborers from neighboring Marathwada, the poorest of the poor. When suddenly the government, in its wisdom, decided to promote religious tourism and a new Kumbh Mela, Nashik Kumbh Mela. When they did that, they diverted 1.3 million liters. What am I saying? 1.3 TMC. 1.3 TMC were diverted for the new Kumbh Mela, with the result that the grape crop did not get more than one of the three. Grape requires 3 rotations, okay, of water. Those upstream got 1 rotation, 2 rotations. Those midstream and downstream got either 1 or nothing at all, and the grape crop of Nashik was fractured. And we exported that crisis into the lives of millions of, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of agricultural laborers in Marathwada who lost 3 million man days of work on the grape fields. So this is the kind of stuff that political decision making leads to. I'm trying to also tell you that, I hate using those words, but the near semi-literate discussion of drought in the media. When we think of drought, we have all been conditioned to think of drought as meteorological failure, rainfall failure. My friends, India has been having a hydrological drought, many parts of the country, for many years. There is such a thing as meteorological drought, hydrological drought, agricultural drought, socio-economic drought. Each of these are linked but mean very different things overall. If you don't take those into account, you're not going to be able to deal with your problem, because your problem is not just about rainfall failure. As I showed you, Anantapur and many districts in Maharashtra get the normal amount per year, but they get it at the wrong time. It's dispersed. It's even destructive in many ways. So what do we do about this? There are 4 or 5 things you can do, and you need to start like yesterday. Okay? The first is, please do not look at water in terms of business and efficiencies and shut out your understanding of the very complex social relationships, political and economic relationships around that, and how fundamental they are to your thing. It's an incredibly complex problem. Don't try simplifying it. Do not try simplifying it. Please understand that it is complex. It matters that you address the complexity. Second, declare water as a basic right. The Supreme Court has said things about this, but it's not been embedded in your constitutional framework of fundamental rights. I don't say human right. Please know that we share this planet with millions of other species that are also an important part of the ecosystem that sustains us. Yeah? There are millions of other species that drink water. I always found this political category, Water Users Association, as a complete absurdity. Water users, who isn't one? The rest of us are what? Dryland bacteria. Yeah? The water, every creature, living creature on what we call the water planet is a water user. So please remember the other species that require it. Your livestock require it. That tiger without the forest reserve requires it. Avni, the pregnant tiger, when she died, just had babies, she required it. You have to think about water for the whole system. And you need to draw up a prioritization of the water uses that you will have. Is the water for that woman in Marathwada more important than water for your golf course, than water for your swimming pools? You have no choice. You will not be able to evade this problem in the years to come. In fact, you shouldn't be evading it now. Right? Uruguay, a tiny country of 3 million people, had a referendum in 2003-04 where they declared that water was a nature's resource to be shared by everyone and could not be privatized. Think about it. Water is a basic right. Don't avoid complexity. Let's discuss and debate this issue. Try understanding it for the political, social, economic, cultural issue, caste and class issue it is. Thank you.
Let's hear it
Thank
for
you.
Mr. P. Sainath
Thank you.
for such a thought-provoking presentation of the water crisis in the country. I think we've all learned so much today, and hopefully after this presentation we've come out a little bit more wiser, and we will not invest in those projects that advertise pools and balconies. Let's stay away from those. Thank you very much, sir. Can I please invite Mr. Jaykishan Chapru, Head of Media Personnel Care Business Products of ITC Limited, to please come on stage and present Mr. Sainath with a token of appreciation. Well, this session was brought to you by ITC. We've spoken about the problem. And now we are going to talk about the solutions. India's mega water crisis and what are we doing to fix it? We have with us Mr. Parmeshwaran Iyer, Secretary, Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation, Ministry of Jal Shakti. And can I also please invite Mr. Raj Chengappa, Group Editorial Director, Publishing of the India Today Group on stage, please. Hopefully now we'll have a slightly less grimmer picture of the water crisis.